to the wisdom of your question, if it's triggering more shame or fear or anger inside of me, like those are three good indicator lights. Because I think fear, shame, and anger are raining down on all of us in real time all the time. I don't need any extra help in that department. And so if it's doing more of that, let that be an indicator light of, I probably need to bow out of some of that.
I met with a really wise mom who used the phrase paralysis by analysis. That's what parents are experiencing today, which is exactly what you're talking about.
Hi, welcome to the Women of Joy Show. I'm your host, Megan Waldrop-Swindling, and today I'm so excited to introduce you to new friends to the Women of Joy audience. David Thomas and Sissy Goff are executive directors at Daystar Counseling in Nashville, Tennessee. You may know them from Raising Boys and Girls, and we sat down and had such a rich conversation around parenting, grandparenting, estrangement, capability, all the things. They have a new book that's out, and we get very specific. So I hope that you enjoy my conversation with David Thomas and Sissy Goff.
Hold your head up high. This is our time.
Sissy and David, welcome to the Women of Joy Show.
We are so honored to be with you.
glad
We're
you're
so
here.
grateful for what y'all do in the world and the difference you make to so many women.
So very grateful.
You guys are doing the same. And it's such an honor to get to introduce you to a lot of our audience that may not know you around the country and the work that you're doing. Will you tell us a little bit about Daystar and what that is and how Raising Boys and Girls, all the things, 30,000 foot view?
We love to. We have both had the great privilege for 3 decades now of working at this amazing place called Daystar Counseling Ministries in Nashville. And we're unique in that we serve just the pediatric population. So our whole focus is kids, adolescents, and families. But we do the work a little different in that we're in a house rather than an office, which is a very intentional decision for us. We have a big team of human therapists, but the most sought-after therapists on our staff are 6 therapy dogs who
They are, yes.
kids love and with all certainty know their names and on occasion know our names. It's a very humbling experience to fall in line of preference behind a dog. It's a great thing for all of us. And then out of that work of just sitting with kids and families for a lot of years, we birthed Raising Boys and Girls, which is this gift we've been given to write some books and speak and podcast around the things that we're learning every day just in sitting with kids and families. So it's this really neat outreach of a lot of decades of learning from what we think are the best teachers, which is kids.
Your new book, which is on capability, which we're going to get into all of that, but it just aligns with what our season is, this with talking about shame and just how we can live radiant lives. In order to do that, we have to be capable. And as moms, like, that's a struggle, right? And I was looking at your material for the book, and you said, and my husband and I have sat many times and said, how did we get here? Like, how did we get to this point where on the worst days, right? You have good days, you have bad days in parenting. But how did we get here? And so just diving into the deep end, tell me about just that question and how that really prompted this book.
Well, we are, as David said, we're so thankful to get to sit with kids and families every day. And doing it all these years, we have seen a lot of trends with kids, with parents. And we are seeing more kids than ever, which thinking, how did we get here, which we certainly address in the book. We're seeing more kids than ever little ones who won't walk in the school building, who are melting down in the parking lot, get a little bit older and they won't try out for a new sport, new activity. Kids who won't reach out to a new friend, don't know how to make a friend. All of a sudden, kids who, so many kids who don't want to get their driver's license, who don't feel ready. And so we're seeing this, we've been calling it a crisis of capability among kids, because thinking about those normal milestones that we were all chomping at the bit to reach are all pictures and kind of forecasting the things that we're going to have to do in life, to take risks, to be uncomfortable. And kids are so avoidant of those things today. And so we felt like 30 plus years in, we're ready to do something about this. We're ready to help kids, equip parents, because parents are feeling the same crisis of capability too.
They are.
What do we do? How can we help? And so we feel really privileged, as you said, to get to share this message and ready. I mean, I don't know that we've written a lot of books over the years, and I don't know that I've felt as strongly about getting a book in each parent's hands and grandparents. And it's been so fun on Instagram sharing about it, the amount of educators who are saying, yes, please.
Yes.
Just feels like it's time.
So why the word capable?
It's a great word. It's a great question, and we love that word. We have a definition in the book is that capable kids have practiced coping and learned competence for life's challenges.
Yes.
And we talk about those 3 C's. And to Sissy's great point, we are seeing greater and greater evidence of kids who struggle with coping with the everyday challenges that life brings and who are afraid to step into these opportunities that build competence, that give way to confidence. And every parent we talk with wants their kids to feel confident in the world. But unless we have those reps that build the confidence, confidence is impossible to reach. And again, to develop the competence means I've got to learn to cope with the hard things. So when I show up at practice and find out I'm not going to get much playing time this week, like that's a challenge that faces kids of all ages all the time, and how we want so much for kids to feel like I can move into these opportunities, I'm capable, and I can bounce back when the hard things hit in life.
Yes.
So when you say, Sissy, I know someone gave me it wasn't your first book, but Raising Worry-Free Girls,
Yes.
right? Like that's where we started together years ago.
Yes, I love it.
And why does this one feel more important? I mean, I can see it, but in your words, like, why does this feel? It almost feels like a generational defining moment.
Yes. Well, I was so grateful to get to write that book, and God in his providence, it came out right before the pandemic. And then, I mean, we were already seeing anxiety and depression rise among kids, and that just catapulted everything. And now it feels like we're in this mental health crisis among youth. Then this capability crisis has followed. And as therapists, I think obviously we believe in the work of therapy and feel like it's so important, and it's retroactive. We're trying to help with the things that have already happened in kids' lives. And again, I think we're at this, like you said, it feels like this moment where if we don't change things, I just am afraid for what this generation, how they're going to encounter the world. I mean, we already know in terms of young adults, there's so many studies about how they don't want to have to work through middle management. They want their own career path straight to the top. How many young adults are distancing themselves from family, cutting themselves off from families. I mean, all these statistics. I read an article about how many women are taking beta blockers before they have to go into anxiety-provoking situations. We are not, I love, David talks about life on life's terms. We are losing the ability to deal with that. And kids are especially. And again, we've got to turn things around because we know, John 16:33, in this world, there's going to be trouble forever this side of heaven. And we've got to handle it.
And I love that you brought up scripture, because I do want to give that underlying tone at the beginning of our conversation for people that don't know you guys and are new to you, that like everything you do is rooted in scripture. But you still bring your research and what you're doing in the counseling room. Like God gave us tools. Will you just speak to that a little bit for people who may be nervous about that therapy? And
I love that you're asking that.
And we feel so passionate about the intersection of those two things.
Right.
And as we even talk about the shifts we've experienced, we're seeing greater evidence than any other time in our work of where kids' faith is over here and their feelings are over here. And it's like the two never intersect. And we believe our faith can greatly inform our feelings and anchor us to truth, which allows me to move forward differently in the world. But if that separation's getting bigger, kids have less access to what we believe is the most powerful tool they can access in the hardest moments of life. And so it's where we do feel like our work is unique, because not a lot of folks are speaking at the intersection.
So as I've been talking about shame this whole season to different people, I'm seeing that parents can shut down when they feel shame of how their kids are behaving, how they just won't go places. They won't do the things that they had been doing. They won't get their kid to try something new.
Yes.
What role are you seeing parents? I'm almost scared to ask this question a little bit, but what role are you seeing parents play in this issue of capability, or crisis of capability, as you call it?
Well, we want to say from the front side of answering that question that we genuinely believe parents are more intentional than they've ever been. I mean, it is a beautiful thing to see how hard parents are trying, how hard they're working, and how much they're wanting to provide good things emotionally and spiritually. I mean, in all the ways for their kids. So we're on your team. As you're listening, we are totally on your team. And we feel like part of what makes it harder than ever to parent are a lot of the experts that are out there. Yeah. To be really honest. And we think they're making shame worse, that they're just exacerbating it because they are, I mean, we are watching through our phones. We are being barked at from so many different voices who have so many different perspectives to the degree that we're having so many conversations with parents in our counseling office and via Zoom both that are saying, we're saying, I think it's time to offer some consequences. Let's talk about some boundaries. And these parents will tear up and say, I didn't know I could still do that. Because there's this sense of, if I'm putting boundaries around my child, I was thinking the other day about how much I'm hearing the phrase, letting kids cry it out, rather than letting kids learn to self-soothe. Somehow we flip that language where crying it out makes the parent feel shame rather than you're teaching your child to self-soothe. But parents will say, I feel like I'm going to either disrupt attachment or I'm going to damage them forever or I'm going to be the reason they're in counseling. And we are just saying over and over to parents right now, put down your phones. Unfollow any experts that make you feel more shame or make you cause you to trust your intuition less because you are the only expert regarding your child. And God's going to speak to you about what your kids need next, more than any of us who are speaking through the little box that is our phone. And so I really hope that part of what we're doing is freeing parents up to go ahead and go to the grocery store and take their kids out of the grocery store if they're screaming and on the ground. You know, that really, I mean, maybe there would be a judgmental parent, but that parent, I don't even know what to say to that parent. Yeah. But the other parents are going to give you a high five on the way out. Right. So I think trust your gut and go on and do the brave thing because you know as a mom who's listening.
So fascinating. John Acuff was on and we talked about his book Soundtracks and that work.
Yes.
But he said, you know, his mom in Massachusetts had 5 moms to compare herself to that were living on that street. And now we have an infinite number on social media.
Exactly.
But something that I'm hearing as we're talking about this topic is parents don't ever make a decision. It's like, I need to hear one more expert say this thing. I need to hear one more. How do we get people to come out of that and just make a decision? Is that our own capability? I mean, speak to that a little bit.
That's such a good question.
It's a great question. And I think it is our own capability. And I think it is an acknowledgement to even the story you just shared of there is a built-in comparison trap in all moments, in real time for every parent. And I was even thinking back to my kids are adults now, but I can remember when they were graduating from high school and my wife would look online at what other moms were doing. And I can vividly remember this conversation we had, and one had made a video memory bank of all these things. And my wife is this incredible woman and a full-time teacher. And she was just like, I didn't do any of that. Like, I don't even know how to do any of that. Our kids won't ever get to watch any of that. And I was like, because you were too busy teaching children to read. That's what you were busy doing, you know, like you had devoted your life to this great thing. And had that opportunity not existed, she wouldn't have known that mom had done that. And that mom didn't do a bad thing. Hear me say that. Like, that's a beautiful offering to her child. But it is to say that invitation exists in real time. And it's all the way back to the wisdom of those words we all know. Comparison is the thief of joy. And so in that moment, it was like, it took away the opportunity to just celebrate the good thing that was right in front of us for a moment because that comparison was robbing her of that opportunity. So I think it is where we do have to develop the habits and practices of shifting out of those voices having access to our ears so often, particularly when, to the wisdom of your question, if it's triggering more shame or fear or anger inside of me, like those are three good indicator lights. Because I think fear, shame, and anger are raining down on all of us in real time all the time. I don't need any extra help in that department. And so if it's doing more of that, let that be an indicator light of, I probably need to bow out of some of that.
I met with a really wise mom who used the phrase paralysis by analysis.
Yes.
But that's what parents are experiencing today, which is exactly what you're talking about.
You guys know I've got 12, 13, and 14 right now, so we are in it.
You are in it.
What does it look like in parenting each child? I think generationally speaking, my parents, no fault to them, but that generation, like everyone was treated the same.
Yes.
And now are we getting too much into, well, so-and-so needs this and so-and-so needs this and so-and-so, and help me balance that, right? For families that have kids that have neurodivergent needs, like you can get so lost in all of it that you feel like you can't meet all of those needs. What do you say to that parent listening?
We're with you.
Yeah.
That's what I would want to say first. And I think we can circle right back to, I think anxiety is at the root of so many even questions we get from parents today. I was doing an event and there was a Q&A and someone asked, how do I help my toddler regulate themselves when I remove screens? Well, anxiety is in so many spaces in that question. And I think, you know, it is, I'm so grateful that we are in a different world and that we know enough about, or we don't know enough. We're learning more about neurodiversity. We're learning more about how to step in with different kids with different needs and relate to them differently, have different boundaries, have different privileges, all those things. And yes, they are certainly important. And they're good. I mean, it is great that fair and equal are not the same thing and that we're communicating that to kids who are going to be mad that one gets a certain privilege, maybe even technology in that world before another. And at the same time, I want parents to pace themselves. And remember, there's only so much you can do within a given day. Back to the story about Connie. And I think you can do a lot to study your child. Number one, what they need. Number two, what they enjoy and how you can connect with them in those spaces. And at the same time, somebody who has multiple children in the house, especially in the adolescent years, you know, survival is probably the most important thing you can do. And so I love that you use the word balance in that question. And really, even more than a practical answer, my answer would be to give yourself a whole lot of grace. And that I mentioned attachment. I love that in attachment theory, parents who create secure attachment with their kids get it right 50% of the time. 50%. That's not a lot. And so any parent who is involved in Women of Joy, who is listening to this podcast, is batting way more than 50%. And so I just would say over and over, when those questions come, like, have I given each of my kids what they need? Give yourself grace. That's what I would go back to.
It's a great answer. There's so many big terms thrown around now, like with in the adolescent community, right? They don't want to drive, but they know all about SSRS, right? Like it's such a bizarre, the self-education that they do that we did not have the capability. Yes. And it's so alarming. And so for parents, many of them are making the call of, when does my kid need counseling? Like, when is that point that are they close to wanting to take their own life? Are they just saying it and for some, like, it feels like that's the next logical step because their friends are all talking about it in real time.
Yes.
Yes.
Thoughts? Great question.
One of the offerings that we give to parents at Daystar is something we call parent consultations, where parents can come in or Zoom in if they're in a different state, to have a conversation with someone on our team to just ask developmental questions. It's a little bit like a pediatric well visit, so that if parents are unsure, if they're seeing some things that feel concerning or alarming, it's a great, easy step as a starting point. Or to have a consultation with your pediatrician, someone who's well-versed in child development that you could say, okay, does this sound normal? not normal, concerning, alarming, and even create a to-do list of how should I go forward. And we love that exists for any parent who's concerned, like, I don't know if this is a good time to start counseling or not. And then you have a great story of how a mom described the experience too.
Well, yes. And you're mentioning it. We're seeing this major inflation of language where kids are not saying I'm sad, they're saying I'm depressed, they're not saying I'm worried, they're saying I have anxiety. Instead of when we were growing up, we would say I want to run away. Now they're saying I want to kill myself. And it's so, I can't even imagine what it's like to navigate that as a parent because of course every alarm goes off inside of you when your kids say those words. And on one hand, I mean, certainly I think if your child is threatening to kill themselves, if you think there's any validity to it, then you take them to the hospital. And I would say regardless, you get them into therapy. And for them to understand the weight those words carry and that you're going to act on it every time.
Because right now it's just another thing that they throw out when they're mad.
Right.
Not always. Not always. Let me clarify that. But often.
But how do you know?
Yeah, it's like, where did this come from?
Well, and then, I mean, this is kind of in the weeds, but we also, one of the things we see with anxiety is whatever, we talk about anxious thoughts being like the one loop roller coaster at the fair. And so the scariest thing a child can imagine of any age is often where their loop gets stuck. And so we have kids who are not suicidal, but they've just learned about it. And so now they think, maybe I just don't want to be, oh no, I want to kill myself. I want to kill myself. But that's their looping thought. And it's not a genuine, they would never do it. But again, that child probably needs counseling. And so I think if you're going to default, I would default towards taking them in to see somebody. And to David's comment, my favorite statement I've ever heard a parent make in this world, she said her daughter was saying, why are you making me do this? Which is very normal. We can't count the amount of times we've had to drag kids in, not drag, but coerce kids in the building who don't want to be there. And so this teenage girl was saying that to her mom, and her mom said, honey, my job as a parent is to build your team. And we've got people on your academic team who are your teachers. We've got people on your medical team who are your doctors. Of course, I would have someone on your emotional team. And we're going to go in and you're going to build a relationship. And then we might not go for a while, but when things come up, you can say, I want to go back to Daystar. And we already have that team member in place. Isn't that beautiful?
That's a great answer.
I know. So a team's good for anybody.
I mean, the world is resulting in kids needing therapy. It's not parents. Sometimes it is, but it's not always like we can take that burden off of us. Like it's just a tool that God gives us to work through our life and the world that we live in that's coming at us.
Way to say it.
Yeah. Okay. Looking at faith's role and capability, because has the church played a part in where we are now with kids?
I have been grieved by, as Sissy was talking on the front side about the number of kids who are hesitant to go in the school building. I have been grieved by how many parents I've heard report, particularly since COVID, but even before, that they can't drop them off at Sunday school and that the reaction is too big. So parents are bringing them to big church, which can be a great thing. Don't hear me knocking that, but often is a distraction for the parent being able to have a full experience of worship.
Correct.
Or worst case scenario, we just stop going to church. I've lost count with a number of dozens and dozens of times. And I'm grieved by hearing evidence of that when I think about all the things that kids are missing and how willing, back to the church's capability, we interact with a lot of children's pastors in our work.
Right.
We're hearing them say with regularity, we want to partner with parents.
Yes.
We're okay with them following apart at drop-off. Like, we can handle that. We're here to support them. We're here to support the kids and the parents. But it brings me back to one of our earlier questions that I think is so important. And parents hear this, as Sissy said, with a lot of grace. One of the most foundational things, I think, for us to develop as parents is the ability to navigate our kids' discomfort as much as our kids are developing abilities to navigate their discomfort. Because so often I think parents can't handle the falling apart in the Sunday school hallway and the feeling of leaving them in the hands in the hands of caring adults while they go have an experience of worship. And I would want to say to parents, I think that is true for the vast majority of churches, that they really do want to partner with you in that way, which is a chance to build capability in kids that they see, I'm safe. My parents dropped me off with trustworthy adults and they came right back. and the opportunity, to your great question, spiritually, for kids to get truth poured into them and for parents to have a little bit of a break and get truth poured into them. So I think I wanted to start there as a way of saying, I think they want to play a great role in helping build capability with kids.
Yeah.
What else would you say?
Well, I just would add, I think, we referenced John 16:33. I think at some point along the way, we jumped to the end of that verse and didn't talk about the beginning. You think about pre-pandemic, how many people had T-shirts on that were living my best life, and the hashtag best day ever was everywhere. I don't think we say either of those things as much since the pandemic. But I do think we would both say we have seen a shift in kids who I don't even think we use the phrase this side of heaven much anymore, or living in a fallen world. And I don't think kids understand that in this world they're going to have trouble. They believe the highlight reel on their social media. And so I don't think we're prepping them for life is going to be hard. I wrote a book for teenage girls called Brave, and I have 2 pages of all the things that are going to be hard for them because I want them to know it's coming. Everyone feels lonely in 7th grade and feels awkward inside of themselves. No one has a perfect friend. I mean, all these things that we all encounter that are truth because I think so often kids default to this isn't supposed to be happening or something's wrong with me, rather than in this world, I'm going to have trouble, but I'm not alone in it. And Jesus has overcome the world. I get to take heart because of that. And so I think I would love for us to get back to talking more about life this side of heaven, that there's good here, certainly, mixed with hard. And I think I loved when David talked about helping kids have a faith that informs their feelings. I think we can help kids find and discover more of that when we are more realistically talking about what this world is like. And they're seeing it, but we're trying to isolate them from it rather than speaking into it.
And what's fascinating I've been working with juniors and seniors at church for years, and then we were in student ministry, and now the impulsivity of I've got to respond to this right now, like right now, but then you don't want to drive a car. Like there's got to be some gap there within it's just odd to me.
Yeah. Oh, interestingly enough, I had a conversation with a dad recently who was talking about his 4th grade son, and he said, my son talks all the time about wanting to play in the NFL, but he won't try out for flag football.
Yes.
And we are seeing overwhelming amounts of evidence of that. And I think it's back to the discomfort piece. Like, I don't want to experience all the discomfort of hot practices and not getting much playing time. Like, all the parts and pieces that are necessary to get to those end goals. We have a section in the new book called Endurance Experiences, and how we want kids to all have those throughout. And all 3 of my kids ran cross country in middle school and high school, and I think that's one of many. There's so many endurance experiences where you have to do something so long, so hard, in the state of Tennessee, so hot and a lot of hills, in the training through the summer to run a race that takes somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes. And then it's over until the next week. Like, all that training, all that preparation, all that hot and hard, that we really do want kids to have so many of those experiences, so that when they get to the bigger moments, when an internship is hard, when a relationship with your roommate in college is hard, like, you see another option of, I don't ever remember thinking, like, I think I should just get the campus organization to move me to a new dorm room. Like, it just was like, sometimes you get a bummer roommate and you got to work that through to the end of the semester.
I heard someone asked to be moved to a new office.
Yes.
Entry-level job.
Yes.
Can you just move my office closer to the door so it's easier to go get lunch?
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Isn't
that fascinating?
It really is. Whereas I would have never have asked that question. But we can't shame them either by saying, well, we didn't do it that way. I feel like my grandparents saying that. It
didn't help.
Like, we can't say that. And so what is the appropriate response?
Well, we're talking so much about David talks about it beautifully in the book, where can you provide context for kids to experience discomfort and experience risk that you're not rescuing them from. And we talk so much, too, about how kids learn that they're capable by experience, by having to do the hard things. And we have in the book, I'm going to try and say it. We can't ever say this. We get tongue twisted. But we have 100 capability building exercises in the book for littles,
go.
middles, and older kids, because it's like, where can we provide context for them to get practice and reps? So there's the sense of, I can do hard things, and I don't expect everyone to cater to me, so I don't have to. Because that is some of what we're seeing in this world. And but it's on us to help them learn something different.
Yeah. And to allow them to feel that discomfort.
Yes.
Yeah. So for parents that have raised their kids, right? Like they're in that seat and they're seeing all of this new research that we have that we didn't have 20 plus years ago. And they just feel like they've done it all wrong. And now they're cut off from their kid. You know, that just feels like such a rampant thing right now that's happening where
It's rampant.
I just don't want to deal with this, so I'm not going to talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
What can parents do in that situation, getting out from under that shame, right, of feeling like they did it all wrong? Yeah.
It feels like further evidence of where that shame is just raining down on us. And I would first just want parents to hear everything you just said. The numbers are through the roof. Like we've never seen anything quite like the movement around family estrangement. And I have two dear friends who are living a chapter of that right now. One whose son has cut off relationship for an extended time. One who didn't just cut off his relationship, but relationship my friend has to his grandchildren, which just breaks my heart on multiple levels. And I think to your question, what can be said that I love that my friends have both said in different moments is there's nothing we can't talk about. The invitation to say, I will sit in a room with any third party you might choose for us to be able to talk about whatever has happened that's been so hard. And I want to learn from you. I think that's a really bold
such a
statement for
humble
a parent.
position.
It is.
It is a humble
Say, I want to learn because, you know, and what's important within that is, you know, I might not agree with your perspective, but I certainly want to know what that felt like for you. And I love, Amy Grant has a song out that's incredible where she talks about, I heard her in an interview talking about having written a song from a counseling appointment with one of her adult children, and starts with, we've been sitting, we must look like a couple of strangers, you know, sitting in a quiet room. You've been struggling, the patterns on the carpet, I've been studying you. You know, like just this sense of, and it's all about, you didn't hear what I meant, and how often I think that can happen. And I want to learn things from your perspective. And I think that third party piece feels really important too, because I think it would be easy for parents and adult children to get stuck in some version of the same conversation. And I think an outside voice could offer challenge and insight to that could be helpful for both parties involved. So that'd be a first thought I have. I don't know if you have other thoughts in that
Well,
space.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I would want to add just some big picture hope of, I do think young adults who are adults are being fed this through TikTok. I think they're being fed it through social media all over the place. And we have a section in the book called Swings and Extremes. And I think this is a swing.
Yes, it is.
And we swing back. We swing back culturally, and I think it's a developmental piece too. I interviewed a female therapist to potentially join our staff and was asking her questions probably 2 years ago. I'll never forget her saying this. And I said, tell me what population you work with now. And she said, I work with the population that think their parents are stupid. And she was saying 20-something-year-olds.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. I remember going through a phase where it was harder for me to see what my parents were doing that was right and good. And we swing back. We learn, the older we get. We have Melissa, who is our dear friend and director at Daystar, says, the older I get, the less I know, but what I know, I really know.
Yes. Yes.
And, you know, I think you're kind of at the apex of feeling like you know so much in your 20s, and you can see the things that other people don't. And life brings humility to all of us. And so I just would say developmentally, there's a lot of hope. And I think this move toward awareness of toxicity in relationships is going to have to calm down because it's just not reality. No one's going to love us perfectly ever. No one has ever loved us perfectly in our past except for Jesus. And so I have a lot of hope that the swing's going to come back.
No, that's a good word. And I love the humility of your friends.
Yes,
That takes a
me
lot.
too.
Indeed.
It does.
And so granting permission for parents to sit in it and say, I'm willing to do what I need to do.
Over and over,
Yeah.
Yes.
repetitively.
And sometimes it's the spouse of the person that your child chose to marry, right?
Yes,
And then that
right.
complicates things even more. And so, but the hope, yes, like it is a swing in a direction that, yeah. And when you can identify, I know early on, you talk about the narcissistic years, right, for teenagers. And I know for me, like, I can say that in my head, and it gives me freedom to know it's a season, right? Like, it's a season.
Right.
It's not. And so when you can understand certain times are going to be hard, it gives freedom. It's not, but I like you both said two different things, right? There's humility and there's coming and understanding that I need to be humble and offer to do my part in this. But in that, there's hope that they can come around on their own. Like, you still have a role to play in this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of that, could I say something for
Yes, please.
parents who are listening who have younger kids and you're thinking, okay, we're not in that season. I hope that doesn't happen. I do think there's some things we could be doing along the way that
Speak
are
to that.
preventative.
Yes, please.
Yes.
You know, I think when Sissy was talking a few minutes ago about anxious kids, one of the things that would be important for us to remind parents, you know this, but just hear us confirming it, is that anxious kids can get really roadblocked by distortions. And as a result of that, sometimes aren't reliable reporters. So they are super vulnerable to saying things like, my teacher was mean to me. My coach yelled at me. A lot of declarations that might have half truths or quarter truths, or often these kids register an elevated voice as yelling. And so the knowing of that would allow us to interpret that data accurately so that we wouldn't then rush into rescue, which I think sets the stage for these kind of moments. It's like, if anyone's mean to you, pull out. I'll get in the middle of that relationship in some way, as opposed to Sissy's great point with 7th grade girls. Let's say that in all seasons, friends are going to disappoint you. Someday your spouse will disappoint you. Someday your job will disappoint you. Church will disappoint you. Like, there is no perfect relationship. And so what does it look like to talk about the hard things in these imperfect relationships all along the way that I think prepare kids for that moment, that they're not so shocked when they're disappointed by friends or get a not so great roommate or feel disappointed by someone they're dating. All these different parts that I think play a role in one role in how we could have arrived at this moment.
That's so good. You talked recently on another, I think it was even on Instagram, but about parents having the therapeutic language now. And we referenced this in the beginning, but just to get a little bit deeper. But then we don't finish. Like, we're good to say, hey, here's, let's pause and think about this. Like, we've got almost a toolbox of words to use, but then we have to finish that.
Yes.
And it's hard. What does that look like?
We call it name and navigate.
Yes.
All caps.
Yes.
And when we only name and don't teach kids to navigate, we say it's like serving kids a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with only peanut butter, And so what does it look like first and foremost to be modeling both those things? So that, even if we're in a heated moment with a kid we love and we can tell we're getting elevated, that we would say, you know what, I think we both would benefit from taking 5 minutes. And here's what I'm going to do. So that my kids are getting to sit front row and see the work of regulation on the grown-ups they trust the most in this world. I'm going to take 2 laps around the yard for a few minutes. I'm going to go outside and pet our dog, whatever it may be that models for kids. This is what it looks like to get yourself from a chaotic state to a calm state, from stress to settled, is how we talk about it a lot of times. So I think it's not just talking about it, but modeling what we're wanting to see kids embody. What else would you say to that?
Well, I feel like what I'm talking about so much in my office with girls is parents who will say, she has all the tools. We've talked about the tools and she doesn't use them. And I think there's this sense of, we expect kids sometimes, once they have the resources, to internally be motivated to use them. They're not yet.
We're not internally motivated
Right.
to
We're
use our
not
tools.
sometimes too.
We're expecting them. Yeah.
Yes. And so I'm talking more about brave beats is what I call them. You call them calming coins with kids, but incentivizing kids actually to use strategies so that the external motivations will then bleed over into the internal, but they're just not motivated enough, because the truth is they would rather us be coping strategies for them than grow their own coping strategies. And it takes work. It takes a month to build a new neural pathway with neuroplasticity. And that's what we're asking them to do. So it's hard work. We might have to incentivize the practice along
And
the
so
way.
you're giving permission to incentivize, right? Because there are parents that are like, they should just have to do this. Like, this is the way it should be. But no, we live in a world that is incentivized. And
Yes.
so you're granting that permission.
Yes,
I'm hearing.
absolutely we are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now we have generations of parents, and then we also have generations of their parents above
Yes.
them. And things look very differently than they did for, let's say, my parents. And my parents, I'm not speaking to you right now. I'm just talking in generalizations. But it's very hard for them many times, and a lot of our audience are grandparents, to watch their kids parent in the way that they're parenting because they feel like it's just not right. It's not the way that we did things. What can they do and what should they do as their kids are working through certain situations within their own homes?
Can I jump in with a story?
Please.
I was at the eye doctor 2 weeks ago, and I love my ophthalmologist. Is it optometrist or it's an ophthalmologist, right?
There's
Okay.
both.
Yeah, I think I was at an ophthalmologist. Anyway, she's awesome, and she told me she was about to become a grandparent. I said, "I'm so excited for you." She said, "Yes, I'm joining the Bruised Tongue Society." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "I'm just going to have to be biting my tongue all the time." Isn't that a great picture?
That is a really good picture.
And I will say,
It's a great picture.
I am not a grandmother, but I'm an aunt
You
that
are.
gets to spend a lot of time with my nephews. And I don't have to do this a lot because my sister and her husband are phenomenal parents. But I hope I am saying to myself, stay in your lane, stay in your lane, stay in your lane, because I think they need to feel capable in themselves. And so I think the more, if I was intervening, they would think I didn't believe they were capable. And I certainly do. And so the balance of saying, I'm here to support you if you need me, maybe even here's a book I heard about on a podcast, but I'm cheering you on. I just think we want to be aunts too. We want to be a resource when they need us. And I think the more we intervene, the more we can take ourselves out of being a welcomed resource when needed. What would you add?
Okay, can I flip the equation?
Sure.
So thinking about the other side of that question and parents who might be resistant to grandparents having too much involvement because they think they're not going to do it. They're not going to execute it the way I would want them, whether it's bedtime or
Or the
screen
hangover.
time. There it is.
Yes.
That almost
Yeah.
always exists after
Yes.
time with grandparents.
Yeah.
We were just doing some research for an episode on the podcast we're going to do on grandparents. And I was rereading, I know this, but rereading fascinating, important research out of Harvard about the significant role that
role.
grandparents play.
Yes.
And when kids have close connected relationship, how it informs their identity, how it informs their emotional well-being, how it informs their social connections, like layer on layer on layer of benefit when it can be healthy and good. And so I think even dipping back into the family estrangement piece, when I'm drawing these clear lines because we don't see things identically, the people who stand to lose the most in that are the kids we love when they miss out on that important relationship. And
word.
when they, even as we were laughing together, come back on Monday and had too much sugar, watched too many, all those things that just are may be a part of that. But we would also say within that it's so good, back to Sissy's point, when parents and grandparents can get in the same chapter of the same book. You know, if they're not operating on the exact same line, on the exact same page in how they see the world or how they believe whatever it might be in terms of things related to their kids, if they could be operating from the same chapter where kids could experience that alignment and that unity. We talk a lot about how unity creates security for kids. We think that's a really great thing.
Because
I
they
t-
hear things. Sorry.
Yes. They hear, say,
Like, just they hear parents talking about grandparents, and they hear,
yes.
yeah.
Absolutely. I just wanted to add one more story that I loved. So we were doing our first speaking event on this very topic, and I ran into a friend and at my sister Kathleen's clothing store. I have to give her a shout out always. And she said, "Tell me the title of the talk in the new book." And I said, "Capable." And she said, "Oh, I love that word." You know, she said, I I realized somewhere along the way that when I was with my mom and my 3 daughters, my mom would use that word regularly. She would say to my girls, "You are capable." And she said, and so I decided I was going to start using that too, and giving them opportunities to live it out. And she said, I got a text from my daughter the other day who's in college, and she said, "Mom, someone just texted me and said they had a flat tire and they didn't know how to change it, but they thought I was the kind of girl who might."
Wow.
And isn't that amazing?
That's awesome.
And I wish I had thought to ask that mother when we had the conversation, did you tell your mom that you noticed that
that's
word
so
and have been
good.
using
Yes.
it? Because my hunch is
Yes.
she never said
Never
it out
did.
loud. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I want to say, grandparents, they're hearing you. Dropping those little seeds has so much power. They're hearing you more than you think they are. And the ripple effect of what you love and teach is so significant.
And it requires us to give a lot of grace
Yes.
on the fact that they're not the same people, just as we're not the same people, right?
Exactly.
That parented us. And so that's hard, but it all requires a lot of grace. So looking at where we are, the year 2026, which is what prompts a lot of grandparents' anxiety and parents, why do you, from your research with the book, think that kids are so unprepared to do life?
There's not one answer to that
Yeah.
question. There are a lot of ingredients in the mix. And certainly it feels important to acknowledge, again, this is, I think, a harder time than ever. We've been doing this work for 3 decades. I think it is the hardest time to be a kid, hardest time to be an adolescent in this world, which in turn means it's the hardest time to be a parent. And, you know, if we even think back to, we laugh sometimes about our journey of applying to go to college back in the 80s. Sissy and I were teenagers in the 80s. You know, like, I needed only 2 things when I applied to college. I needed a pulse and a checkbook. That was it, you know, and now it's as if kids need a resume to have started a nonprofit, a perfect GPA, like all
They're
the
taking
pressure.
the free ACT in 8th grade.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
it's just
So
unreal.
Yes, we were
Yeah.
just talking with someone recently about how there are now coaches, like ACT coaches, to help you know how to navigate rush. You know, it's just like
Yes,
that didn't
yes,
exist
yes.
when we were growing
Yes,
up. So the
right.
pressure that I think kids absorb, the pressure that I think parents absorb, is a key part. And when we are trapped by whether it is the fear or the shame, so we've been talking about, it will inevitably get in the way of so many things, of who I want to be as parents, and to the larger conversation we're sharing of building that capability. And even most importantly, I think trust in God. Like, if I'm so trapped in worrying my kids aren't going to get into college or get into the sorority or fraternity that's going to inform their experience, like, where am I demonstrating a trust in God of believing, like, if they're supposed to go to college, there's a college out there somewhere that will pick them. And God will make a way financially for that to happen. Like, where is the opportunity for that I think is so foundational to the bigger conversation we're having is one thing I'd say. What would you say too?
Yes, I love that you talked about that. And I think there's so many practical things we could talk about, from technology to the pandemic certainly contributed to it, because we were uncomfortable in a wider sense, but we were all really comfortable in our bigger discomfort. And kids weren't uncomfortable because they weren't having to make a new friend at the playground. They weren't having to reach out. They weren't having to make speeches in front of a class, so many things. And we've seen this shift as kids who were really young or hitting important developmental milestones during the pandemic are getting older, that they're not as practiced in discomfort and in risk. And so I think the practical things are important to be aware of and maybe even address with kids. And I would say zooming out to what you talked about in the big picture is so important for all of us, awareness-wise.
And even you guys, I know at Daystar talk a lot about role playing
Yes.
and allowing parents to
Practicing.
role play and practice what that's going to look like to help kids feel capable when they're
Yes.
in those moments. Any advice to parents? Because that feels awkward, right? At first, when
does.
parents are doing that. But it's so vital for that kid to then be able to pull from that short-term memory to go, okay, I know what to say. in this
Driving to the birthday
situation.
party.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
And you can acknowledge that it's silly. Okay, this is kind of silly, but you be, Mrs. Smith, and I'm going to be you, and let's practice what might happen when you walk in the door. Yes.
Kids are primarily experiential learners, and it's an experiential tool that helps them make connections. And I don't think any of us outgrow it. Sissy and I are going to be on the Today Show next week, and we're going to role play about 10 times
we
sitting
are
on
gonna-
that couch because
Yes,
we're so
I'm
nervous
so
about it. So
Seriously. You're
gonna
we
do
don't
fabulous.
outgrow that
so kind.
need for
You're
that
fabulous.
practice.
Right.
You're going to do fabulous. Gosh, that's going to be so great to get this message out to all
Thank
those
you.
people.
You're
So good.
kind.
With just thinking about resiliency, which is at so much of the core of what I understand this book to be about. You presented something that I had not ever thought about in my own work, but that resiliency is not a one-time thing. And I know Dave Denton, who's in your office, like we've talked about many times, like resiliency to me is one of the most valuable things that a kids can have is the ability to be resilient. But that whole new premise of like it's not a one-time thing, speak to that for me because that was so good.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if it was? Like we just gave them a gummy
I
on their
want it
10th
to be
birthday.
like you kind of popped my balloon a little.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think the hopeful part of that is this. Like for parents who are listening who have an adolescent, that you just think, oh my goodness, we haven't been committed enough to developing these things. Or I worry I've gotten in the way in these ways. Like that muscle can still be developed. It's never too late. And we had a conversation this morning with an extraordinary woman who would argue that she built an overwhelming amount of resiliency out of an unwanted divorce. And so there's always that opportunity for growth for our kids, for ourselves along the way. So I even want that to be hopeful if it's not too late. It's not a one-time event where we might have missed the opportunity. What would you say?
I met with a mom not long ago, and we all know Nashville schooling is crazy. And getting into private schools in particular these days is,
It's like college.
yes, or graduate
Yeah.
school even. It's so intense. And she just was sobbing about the fact that her daughter hadn't gotten into the schools that she most wanted initially. She ended up getting into one of them. And my immediate response was exactly what we're talking about. Resilience capability is not built when everything's easy. It just doesn't happen. It's built in the harder moments. We know suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And so the practicing over and over. And I said to her, I'm more worried about children who've never hit any bumps than the kids who hit them and learn to work through them. And so, and again, I think we're so concerned that parents are doing everything they can to remove every obstacle. And that's not how kids learn. And so back to David's idea of trust and remembering that from my experience with scripture, the only direct pathway to hope that is ever outlined besides through Jesus is that passage through suffering.
That's such a wise point. Wow.
And so how do we let our kids experience that? Let our kids, and it doesn't have to, I mean, of course we don't want them to experience full-blown suffering, but how do we let them experience discomfort and age-appropriate healthy risk without us rescuing? We talk about in the book that we want to be valuing sturdy over success, health over happiness, resilience over relief or rescue, and capability over confidence and competence. And so leaning into those things with a whole lot of trust, and it's going to require a lot of trust and a lot of hope on our part.
Someone that I'm working with right now, she says the only way through is through.
Yes.
And that was such a catchy thing to say with my girls of just, we have to get through it. Like not going through it is not the best option. So at Daystar, you all require parental conversation and involvement within the counseling process. How, I know, David, when you spoke at our church, someone asked, like, what is the main thing that you would tell parents to do and to be healthy themselves, is what you said. And how that's hard to hear, but why do you guys require that? And what role do parents play in creating capable children?
It's a really good question.
Yes.
Would first say we have long said, always believed that the greatest gift we offer the kids we love is to do our own work. And there's really not a substitute for that. And secondly, a part of the wisdom of that rhythm, we believe, is it's an opportunity for us to collaborate with parents and hear from them and reinforce this message we've talked about today of, your kids way better than we do. We want you to share observations. What are you seeing that will inform and be so helpful to the work we're doing? And then we want to share observations too. And so there's something of great importance, I think, for parents to experience that, but also for kids to see that. Like all the grown-ups who are caring for me come together periodically. It's why schools do parent-teacher conferences. It's why pediatricians say, I'm going to meet with just the kid right now, and then mom or dad and I are going to talk some together. I think it's so great when kids get to sit front row to see that. So we talk openly about that with kids in the first appointment, like your parents are going to be really involved in this process. And we love even saying some version to kids of, you didn't come with an instruction manual. Your parents have a lot of questions. I always say to teenagers in particular, like, you're their first adolescent. They don't know exactly what to do. It's a confusing, overwhelming thing. So we're going to check in from time to time, and parents always have questions. Even normalizing that, I think, for kids is a helpful and important thing to do.
That's so good.
And speaking to capability within that, though, what are like just a couple of practical things that listeners could do today with their kids to help spark capability?
Well, like I said, we've got those 100 capability building exercises. And so, and those are very specific per age group. But beyond that, I love David's thought about where are you providing a context for discomfort? Where are you providing context for risk, healthy age appropriate risk? And even where are you giving them opportunities to fail? And if we were going to drill it down even more practically, we love to ask the question, what are 2 things you're doing for your kids right now that they can do for themselves? And what are 2 things you're doing for your kids that they can almost do for themselves? And we want you to stop doing all 4.
It's really good. You said something. I interviewed Jess Wolstenholme. I'm not going to say her last name right, but
love Jess.
You were talked about a lot during that episode. She was so great, just on Easter and talking about hard things with your kids around spiritual topics. But one of the things that came up in our conversation was just how you talk about on the way home from school, not bombarding your kid. And that is so practical. Will you share that?
Yes. Well, I think we so naturally jump in with, how was your day? Kids feel like there's an interrogation. I remember a girl telling me so long ago that her mom would ask her so many questions. And she said, I just am tired after school. I'm kind of tapped out on talking and making conversations. I'm working so hard during the school day to do all that. And she said, and my mom asked me questions, and if I don't answer her, she chases me to my room and bangs on the door, continuing to try and ask. And so Melissa and I wrote a book so long ago called The Back Door to Your Teen's Heart, and about teenagers. And her line that started the book was, to the degree that kids can predict you, they'll dismiss you.
Gosh, that's good.
Isn't that good? And it's so true, especially for adolescents. And that's what we're doing. How was your day? Fine. What'd you do at school today? Nothing. And we've got no information. We don't know our kids any better. We don't know anything more about their day. And so we are big advocates of obviously still being the parent, but letting conversation kind of happen naturally. And so putting on a song when they get in the car, and then later going up to their room and saying, tell me one thing about your day. Or that after they finish their homework, we say, let's go walk the dog. And so many conversations happen side by side rather than eyeball to eyeball, because especially teenagers get awkward with intimacy, and eyeball to eyeball is too much for them. Yes. And so those side by side conversations, and David talks beautifully about helping boys have conversations either around a task or around queso. That either one.
We play a lot of basketball at our
Good
house.
for
So
you.
good.
A lot of basketball.
Good for you.
It can also, to me, for my parenting, and I feel like other parents could relate to this, it can sometimes say you're not capable if they get in the car and we're going over everything. Did you turn this in? Did you get this? Did you? And so it just fit within the context
reminder.
of this conversation too. Yes. And grandparents, all the things that we're talking about that are applicable to kids are also applicable to grandparents listening. But I love what you said about involving the wisdom and just the relationships that are needed. And we'll be sure to share that podcast with our listeners too on grandparenting, because that's so important. Yes. So a final question that we ask all of our guests: what is something right now that's bringing you unexpected joy in your life, personally, spiritually, any area?
I have one. Do you have yours?
You go first, because we have a lot of the same ones.
Well, this thing I'm about to say is bringing both an amazing amount of joy and exhaustion, equal parts of both. And that is, my wife and I got a puppy not long ago.
Oh, you did.
We did. We lost a 12, almost 13-year-old lab. And then we
You got a puppy
decided
during a
to
book launch.
start over. And it is fascinating to relearn what we had forgotten, which is this is so much work. But it's incredible. I mentioned my kids are adults now, and our group text together is more about this dog. Like I look back over it and we are sending the most ridiculous amount of photos, and they'll periodically just say, because they all live out of town now, like, please send photos of June. It's been 2 days and we haven't seen a photo of June. And it is giving me so much joy that we have this ongoing dialogue about this little creature. And I think we've long promoted the benefits of families owning pets, and there's a lot of research to back that up as well. And it is sure accomplishing the things we talk about it accomplishing.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I would have to say my nephews, 7 and 4, and they are so fun and so cute and hilarious. My littlest nephew, I love to go see their games. And his last soccer game I went to, before he ran out on the field, he kissed all his muscles and then pawed at the ground like a bull and ran out onto the field. Talk about capability.
Yes.
And I think just having time with them, getting to do life with them closely brings me so much joy and pulls me out of the minutia of life and the weight that I feel like I carry on a daily basis. Just being with kids is good for all of us. Young kids.
Yes, young kids.
Especially. Yeah.
Yes, but they all get better over time.
They do.
Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to share. And thank you for this book and the research and the writing. And I know all of our listeners will want to read it. There'll be audiobook, all the things, right?
Yes,
and so, yeah, get it however you want. It'll be in the show notes. But most of all, just thank you for sharing all of this wisdom with us today.
Thank you for having us.
It's a gift to be with you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with David Thomas and Sissy Goff. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. And most importantly, all the things that we discussed in the podcast today are linked in the show notes. I hope to see you soon at a Women of Joy Live event.